literally, okay, I'm so mad, right? Because I had, like, this beautiful Santa hat that it cost me like 20 cents, and I was all ready to wear it for this because it's about Christmas, and then I accidentally threw it out. It was like an Easter show prop, and then I threw it out, and I'm like, fuck, I don't know what I'm gonna wear to keep in line with the costuming because I have to make books interesting somehow, right? So we're gonna slow it down a little bit for this one. We're gonna take a break from the bizarro, sort of gendery, patriarchy sort of short stories, and we're gonna go into something that's a little more spicy, and a little more experimental. So the book we're going to talk about is called A New Name, which is the last part of the Septology by Jon Fosse, which is a collection of around 7 books, each about 100 to 150 pages, and they deal with an old man as he comes to terms with his life and what he's made of it. This book is in competition for the 2022 International Booker Prize, which I've been covering. I started with Cursed Bunny, and next I'm going to do, I think, Elena Knows, and then I'll do Heaven, and then Books of Jacob. So as I said, this book is about an old man called Asles, I think, Asles, and he is an old man who lives near the Signe Sea in Norway, and he's coming to terms with the long life he led, and he's relating to his doppelganger, who has the same name as him, and he's going to spend Christmas with his friend's sister. So I literally am so not the target demographic for this that I don't even know what the fuck to say about. I don't know where to begin, right? I'm like, how old am I? I'm 20, I have absolutely no attention span, I could give a fuck, I don't like James Joyce, what am I doing here? What's the point? So I had a very interesting and bizarre reaction reading this. I had no idea what I was meant to be taking from it. I could barely remember anyone's name. I wasn't sure who we're focusing on at any given point. It was bizarre, and I didn't like it per se, but I could appreciate it on a lot of levels. So what's key to this book, and what's key to the whole Septology from what I've heard? I haven't read the rest of it, which we'll get into, but what's key to it is that it's kind of stream of consciousness. It's all one sentence, and it's all kind of inner thoughts, and it's very overflowing and kind of rolling out. It regularly changes from present day to the past and back and forth, and it does so in a very simple and sort of melodic way. The changes between past reminiscence and present day are always just perfect in terms of the flow. It's like a musical flow. It sort of moves between keys and pace, and it's perfectly drafted. You feel like he's taken hundreds of attempts at writing it, and he's drafted it very precisely every time, because the way that it links between different things and slowly sort of inches towards certain revelations or certain things we learn about the character is very interesting. The one thing I can really commend him for is his like absolute control of pace. Just in terms of what your eye is reading and how fast you're reading, the use of repetition, the way he, how do I put it, the way he says things. If he wants you to read it quickly and process it kind of like a dream, then he really takes advantage of the one sentence thing, and he doesn't put any commas in. It's just bam, 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 bam. There's one section where he's talking about the paintings that he's painted, and it's kind of sort of nightmarish, and it's just one after the other, just bam, 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 and it's very like, it has such a fast flow to it that you read through it and you're like, oh, what the fuck? And then other times, it really takes its time. There's huge segments when they're on the boat going towards the island, and it took me fucking forever to read because I was just like, oh, yeah, now you're on the boat. Like, that use of repetition and those changes in description are what really sell the book and sell its meditative and kind of hypnotic nature. That's what people are talking about. He calls it slow verse or slow prose, or at least other people call it that. And I understand why it has its own term, because it's very specific. The major themes go kind of unstated. Well, I say unstated. They're obviously there and you can read into them, but it's not like the book is insisting upon itself. The encroaching fear of death, the idea that life is just a series of mediocrities and menialities and events, and life is not really composed of anything more than connection between the two. The kind of limbo the main character finds himself in, and how he's just forced to repeat things in his mind, rethink things, and consider them. The evolution of experience to, like, its very end. All of it is only capitulated in his painting. That's all it is, how he now realizes, oh, I don't really want to paint anymore. I just leave the paintings in the attic. That's how that's said. And then occasionally to end each chapter, he puts in a whole bunch of fucking Latin. He throws a bunch of Latin at you, and I was like, wait. The idea that the main character has lost some kind of life essence he had is crucial to the idea, and the fact that it plays out over such a short period of time. He barely exists anymore. He and his doppelganger, which we'll get into, they don't exist as people anymore. They're just vessels for thought, and vessels for past action to kind of become apparent to him. It was interesting the way that what he was thinking did not impact at all on the present day, really. Like, what he was talking about was with Asles, or what he's doing, kind of just related to the past in the sense that he was thinking about it, but he didn't bring any of that into the present day. Which made sense, because he doesn't exist. Like, that's what I thought. The pictures I paint are prayer and penitence and confession all at once, is one of the lines that stuck out to me. And that's definitely what it's made to be. That his painting was part of his life, and was in tandem with everything else he had in his life, and now he has none of it, and he's just left to kind of think about it. But it's not melancholy in a kind of like gravitas, oh, death is coming for me way. It's melancholy in a different, sort of more spiritual sense. When he dies at the end, or that's my interpretation, I guess he dies and he visits God at the end, it's not a sad moment. It's a moment that has been coming for the whole book. It's an interesting blend of like narration as well. So he has this doppelganger who's led a completely different life, and he's descended into kind of alcoholism. And I could never, in these past fragments, tell the fucking two of them apart. They have the same name. Their wives' names seem to change. I don't know if that's just me. And certain characteristics, I just wasn't pinpointing to each of them. So I never knew what we were talking about, and I just dismissed the idea in my mind that they were two different people. That's what I did. I just ignored the fact that they could be two different people, and I just focused on them as the one person, each living two different lives, two different experiences that are not captured in event. I never felt like I had to read the rest of the Septology to understand this. I feel like if I had, I still wouldn't understand what the fuck was going on. I didn't feel like that was my fault, though. I didn't feel like it was my fault for not understanding it. Wives' names change, characters change. I could only follow the Christmas dinner shit. Everything else I was like, what the fuck is happening? Who is the boy? Which relative is he? But I didn't feel like that was the point. I didn't feel like me not understanding it lessened my experience of it. And I never felt compelled to go back and figure out what was being said, because that wasn't what I was taking from it. It's about the mediocrity of life in every way. It's anecdotes, little anecdotes, and the connectivity in between them is the life. That's what that is. It's about thoughts about what a character should do or should have done. Whenever it builds to something, like the end of the first part of the book is the one that stands out to me more than the end of the second book. You see it coming, but it doesn't start out. It's like it starts out innocuously, but you can see that something's coming. And then it does, and it builds very naturally, and then the ending of both books is really fucking, like, effective and bizarre. Yeah, the ending of the book is fucking crazy, and full props to the translator, because I never felt like I was being pulled out of the book and seeing what the translator thought. Even when it got crazy and it kind of broke the sort of flow that it had, I never felt like that was the translator having to be like, what the fuck do I do with this Norwegian bullshit? Do I just make it up as I go along? I never felt that. I felt like it was really in control, and that it was just Jon Fosse that was a crazy man. It's something about that fucking Norwegian northern air that gets to like Fosse and like Knalskaard and Hamsun and people like that, where they're fucking nutcases, and the way they write is so like simple. And like Knalskaard, he got sued by his whole family because he wouldn't shut the fuck up. Fosse, I imagine, is just drawing on things that he did. Like, it's so bizarre the way that they're written. Yeah, they're fucking crazy people. I've seen comparisons to Joyce over everyone else, like as a writing style, and I can't say I know why. Joyce is full of reference, and he stuffs his shit full of like humor and culture and like style. Fosse doesn't do that. It's more meditative, and it's more glacial, and it's more personal, I felt. It's more comparable to Proust in every way. It's identical in some ways. The way Proust links certain memories to certain events is very similar to the way Fosse does his my spot on the Cygni Sea as his way of linking between the two, that he was thinking about that at one point and then he draws back to that. It's very similar to how Proust does it. I feel like I prefer, like, again, I haven't read all of Remembrance of Things Past. I'm a fucking young person. I go out and I drink alcohol and I fuck. I don't read Remembrance of Things Past. I have read the first book. I've read Swan's Way and the one after Swan's Way. I haven't read any more than that. I won't until I'm mid-60s, alright? Shut the fuck up. But from what I've read of Proust in terms of Swan's Way, particularly, that's the one that stands out to me the most, I was really drawing from Proust as a person. I was really getting a lot from him. And I was getting a lot from the style. I felt like it was a really stylish book. You could feel when you were reading it just the pure influence it had. Like, it's really good. Like, Remembrance of Things Past, like, all jokes aside about the length and how only old people read it, like, it's genuinely quite gripping. I did not feel the same way with this book. I will say that this book, A New Name, really bored me. Not in a bad way, I know that sounds mean, but it really, I was fucking bored reading this. I was reading this on the train, reading it on the bus, reading it just at home, like, at like midnight. My eyes were fucking going off the page, and that doesn't normally happen with me, but I was really feeling it with this one. After about the first 50 pages or so, I went, like, yeah, what the fuck else is there for me to say? Like, it's... No discredit to anything in the book, right? It's just not really for me. I don't feel like it's for me personally. It's very easy to appreciate a book like this because of the simplicities of like the slow prose language and things like that, but just generally I was not feeling it. But I can't take that away from the score of the book because I'm trying to be at least partly objective, even though I want these reviews to be something that comes from the perspective of a 20-year-old fucking hack who barely reads. I want it to be from the perspective of someone who is not particularly pretentious. That's what I want to be, is like kind of a layman in that way. And in that way, as I am, I was not getting much from the book, and that's no discredit to the book at all. I think the other thing I like, I mean, I said I wasn't pretentious, that is a bare-faced fucking bald-ass lie, first of all. I am very pretentious, but I do like a lot of style in my books. I do like a lot of language. I like a lot of sort of power in the prose. I like a lot in that. You know, I prefer something like Books of Jacob over this. And again, I haven't finished Books of Jacob yet, but I prefer something like that just because it has the real oomph to it. It has the power of history behind it. It has the power of, like, description and genuinely, like, ballsy fucking author. With this book, I felt like it was crazy, but it was also kind of safe in a few ways, and I did not get a whole heap from it in the way that I wanted to. This book is touted to win the International Booker Prize over Books of Jacob. I kind of get it, because the committee has done some crazy shit, like the International Booker Committee. If it wins, I'll take it in the chin, and I'll be looking the fuck out for it to win the Nobel in the next 5 years, for Fosse to win the Nobel Prize, because I just know they'd be fucking tearing at their bridle to give it to him after that. A Norwegian man! In terms of ratings, I'm very torn, because I can appreciate it and I can see what people love about it. Reading these Goodreads reviews, these people love the shit out of it, like, and I get it, I do get it. Like, I can understand how this could be a profound, like, spiritual experience to read this book, but for me, I'm just not at that place. I'm not at that level of maturity yet. You get, like, I was just joking about, like, drinking and fucking, right? Because I'm, like, a uni student. It's not for me. I don't have that maturity in me yet. So I'm not, I can't appreciate it on that base level, but I could really get behind the idea of that language and get behind the idea of the pace of it and what he was able to do in such a short period of time. Like short space of page is what I meant. Like, I could really get behind that in its context. There aren't individual moments that stand out to me, as you'd expect, but overall, as its own thing, it really achieves what it sets out to do in creating a dream. It creates a dream, like this bizarre spiritual experience that you just kind of dip your toes into, and then you get pulled. Toes in pool, you get pulled by the toes into the pool. Yeah, good one, Alex. I think I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It's closer to a 6. I'm just not at that sort of stage where I could be giving it, like, these crazy high ratings. and I don't know if I ever will be. I'm just not that kind of reader. I'm not into that kind of literature. So I think a 7 out of 10 is probably fair. Make sure you let me know what you think by hitting that dislike button and commenting that I'm a hack and that I'm gay, and say all that in the comments, and I will appreciate it and understand it. Thanks for watching, boys. Merry Christmas.